If you walked up to any brony and asked them to name the most popular My Little Pony fanfiction, chances are their answer would be Fallout Equestria, Past Sins, My Little Dashie, or everyone's favorite gorefic, Cupcakes. Released back in the middle of Season 1 of the show, this is one of the first Pony Grimdark fanfics ever made, and now to this day it's almost impossible to mention these delicious confectionaries without at least one brony being reminded of Sergeant Sprinkle's magnum opus. Thankfully, most bronies brush the fan-made story off as just that, fan-made. It couldn't ever actually happen. Or could it? While obviously Cupcakes would never happen in the show itself due to it being a children's show, for the purposes of these tests, we're going to pretend anything can happen in the show, just like we always do. So don't start commenting that this entire episode is null and void because the writers don't want to scar kids for life. So with that in mind, in order to determine how realistic it is for Pinkie Pie to start chopping up her friends, we need to first determine 3 things. First, we need to figure out if Pinkie could actually develop the state of insanity that would lead to her performing such acts. Next, we have to see if Cupcakes stuffed with horse meat could actually be edible and pass unnoticed. Lastly, we need to figure out if all that stuff that happened down in Sugar Cube Corner's basement would actually transpire the way it does in writing. Naturally, consider yourself warned that this episode is not for the faint of heart, as I'll be dissecting the story almost as much as Pinkie Pie did Rainbow Dash. Oh, shut up, you couldn't have honestly expected me to pass up that joke. The first question is, thankfully, the one that requires the least amount of rereading the story. Could Pinkie Pie develop such a mental state that she began randomly selecting ponies to cut into Cupcakes, not even hesitating when this includes one of her best friends, and yet, at the same time, never lose her regular personality and attitude? Well, to find out, we need to try and find any mental illnesses that are linked with such behavior as well as with Pinkie Pie herself. It's likely that the average Joe would point you towards bipolar disorder, which isn't too far off. However, bipolar disorder consists of alternating between manic, hypomanic, and depressive episodes. We've seen Pinkie Pie, and while it's fun to joke about, she isn't genuinely bipolar just because she switches moods on a dime. In fact, that fact is what proves she isn't bipolar. The manic, hypomanic, and depressive episodes of bipolar disorder last at least a week, even with treatment. If untreated, they can go up to a few months or even half a year. Pinkie simply has mood swings, which are rather common for people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, something that she clearly has an exaggerated version of. But the manic, hypomanic, and depressive episodes aren't exclusive to bipolar disorder. They are, in fact, their own conditions: mania, hypomania, and depression. We can all agree that Pinkie doesn't have depression, since bouts of sadness are entirely different. Mania and hypomania, however, are a different story. Hypomania is essentially a more mild version of manic disorder. In fact, hypomania literally means below mania. So what are the symptoms of hypomania? Being extremely energetic, talkative, confident, assertive, and creative. Sound familiar to anyone? However, this doesn't quite help with our Cupcakes research, since what distinguishes hypomania from mania is the lack of psychotic symptoms. So to say Pinkie Pie lived in a permanent state of hypomania would be, while likely true, not particularly relevant. But we haven't talked about actual mania yet. Mania is essentially hypomania turned up to 11, with additional psychotic features such as hallucinations, paranoia, impulsive spending sprees, aggression, catatonic behavior, and occupying themselves with activities so much they are led to self-neglect. Hallucinations.
Losers might be a little strong, don't you think?
After the way they treated you, I say losers isn't strong enough.
Paranoia.
Wait! Can you hear those chefs? We have to protect...
Impulsive spending sprees.
What am I gonna do with all these now?
What were you gonna do with them before?
Aggression.
Applejack! You picket promised!
Catatonic behavior.
Some ponies making balloon animals! What? Where? Pinkie, you can look away now. I passed?
Activities leading to self-neglect.
She's still at it. I just wish we could help her. Help me? The only thing that could possibly help me right now is a letter from Rainbow Dash. It's been 3 days already. By now, she probably doesn't even...
But no, these could just be coincidences. A few symptoms doesn't make her manic, right? Right. But what's one of the most signature symptoms of mania that's specific enough to not brush off as coincidental? Racing thoughts, wherein the manic person, or pony, is mentally stimulated by completely unimportant objects. Completely different from just being easily distracted, as this is a case where the person who gets distracted is unable to think of anything except what has caught their attention. And now, with that explained, let me point you to Three's a Crowd.
Oh, you're so sweet to offer. But Rarity and Applejack already volunteered to be my own personal nursemaids.
We did?
I so hope you don't mind, Pinkie Pie.
Well, as a matter of fact, I most certainly... Hey! Who keeps throwing away these perfectly good balloons?
Now do you see? Hypomania my cutie mark. Pinkie Pie is clearly suffering from mania. And this is where things get related to Cupcakes again. Mania is very commonly known to lead to psychosis, which as we all know, is stereotyped as involving homicidal ideation, thoughts about homicide. And, unlike the idea that all Christians hate homosexuality and all Mexicans wear sombreros, this stereotype is more truth than exaggeration. In fact, according to one study in the United States, psychosis accounts for 89% of admissions of homicidal ideation. While it's true that not all cases of homicidal ideation lead to actual homicide, pairing that up with mania makes for a very dangerous combination. If Pinkie were to start cutting up ponies, she wouldn't be hiding her insanity with her cheerful personality, because her cheerful personality is her insanity. She hasn't transitioned to the psychosis yet in the show's canon, but it's obvious that she has mania nonetheless, and she could become the Cupcake Killer without a hitch if she decided to. And looking at her symptoms, to say she could decide to do so at any time with little to no provocation is clear as the Crystal Empire. But that hasn't decided everything for us just yet. Could she actually bake meat into cupcakes without any pony noticing? And would that sequence with Rainbow Dash actually happen the way it did? Well, as much as I'm sure we all want to know the answers to those questions, they're gonna have to wait for another time. Join us 2 weeks from now when we tackle those topics, seeing if cupcakes could actually happen in Equestria, or if I'm just being a little overanalytical.